Hey there, how's everybody? Yeah, really happy to be here today. I've got two super good people with me, and we're just going to have a great chat. We've got Faiz Nazarali from Highvibe, as well as Chiyoko, also from Highvibe, and it's International Women's Day today, depending where you are on the planet. So great to have them both here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so Faiz and I go back quite a while. We were introduced to each other by a lovely lady, and we hit it off right away. It was just at the nascent stages of Highvibe. I think you just put your business plan together and you launched Highvibe and got that going. And you've come a long way today, right? And we hit it off so well that we both co-founded Trusted Node. So super happy that we've been on this journey together, trying to constantly find new ideas and really extract the value and the opportunity that blockchain provides. And so, yeah, high fives. And maybe you want to sort of say a bit about yourself and how you're doing and a bit your background.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like lifetimes ago when we first met, but it's only been a few years. And yeah, it's nice when you click with someone and there's like this trust that, gets spawned off and you're able to just move in the world in a way that amplifies both of your efforts. And so I feel like you and I, no matter where we are in the world, we're always sort of benefiting each other, supporting each other and looking after each other. And it has a ripple effect, that culture gets built within teams, gets built within partnerships, gets built across, investors. And I think that we're building a track record that is really, setting the stage for so many good things to come. So I'm very excited to be working together. And with Highvibe, yeah, it's from idea to reality, it's been such an amazing journey. And Chiyoko here with me is one of the co-founders of Highvibe Network. And yeah, it's auspicious. We're here on International Women's Day, and also just like there's so many really exciting things happening in the world, but also it's one of the more challenging periods in the world as well, where there's like lockdowns happening and there's, threats of war and, things that are really, really troublesome and challenging. And I feel like this is an opportunity to come together like never before. And our missions and what we're here for are actually more important given the state of affairs. So I'll share more about Highvibe and, just from my own perspective, I'm here to add as much value as I can for the planet and also have fun along the way. I feel like if you're doing good work but you're not enjoying it, it comes through. And so enjoying the journey is actually really important. And also being, consistently able to do hard work as well. Like doing the easy stuff isn't necessarily going to get the job done. And so Chiyoko has some great wisdom that she shared with me in the past that, the monks say that, what do you do before enlightenment? You chop wood, carry water. What do you do after enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. It's a funny saying. It actually just goes to show like, no matter how successful you are, no matter how smart you are, no matter how amazing you are, there's still things that sort of need to get done for life to exist. And you don't have to resent them. You can actually embrace them.
Yeah, and that sort of leads to you, Chiyoko. I mean, the first time I met you was, I think, and you've been on a long journey with Faiz, and given that we can't get together in person, but we've all been doing this remotely, you organized this great event and had me kindly as a speaker. And so, yeah, super glad to see you on the journey on Highvibe and co-founding it and getting to know you much better.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll say your video glitched for just one moment there, Stefan, but everything else was completely fine. So I'll just mention that. And I heard what you said. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, being on this journey, that's what it really is. It's a journey. And the destination, we have an idea of what direction we want to go. We have a North Star, as I always like to say. It's really about what are the experiences on the twists and turns of the journey, and what is the unexpected, and what's the magic that's going to reveal itself, and who are the amazing humans who we're all going to come in touch with and get to know and get to collaborate with. And that's exactly what's happening right here. It's all about the journey. And I know all three of us are very mission oriented with the North Star of, as Faiz said, I share this value system of, the way I word it is, how do you be of greatest service while having the most amount of fun? That's my definition of a life well lived. That's what I'm interested in doing. Being of service, doing things I love with badass, cool people like yourselves, and let's have a lot of fun while we're doing it. And that has been something that was a realization of mine over 10 years ago when I had a massive career pivot. Happy to share more later if we have time for that. But so about over 10 years ago, my orientation of my soul's purpose, what really gives me the greatest amount of joy and happiness, is contributing to other people's well-being and wellness. Wellness is somewhat of a generic term, these days, but I take that seriously. And what is our own individual well-being?
What was that pivot? How did that pivot? What triggered that, number one? And where were you coming from when that trigger then kicked in?
I like your maneuver. I'll go on that tangent. Happy to go on many different tangents. We have many options here, but I'm mindful of time.
It's always interesting where you have a big pivot in your life and it changes your perspective, right? We all went through that.
Absolutely. So my pivot happened in the year 2010, so 12 years ago. It was a radical spiritual awakening that I had. And this was after working 10 years, so a decade, in the fashion industry in New York City. So that's when I started my career straight out of college, advertising, marketing, branding. I was around when Web 2 was invented, literally e-commerce was birthed forth, and the fashion industry was a little slow to adopt e-commerce. I was there when people said, no one will buy clothes online. It just won't happen. People have to go into a fitting room in the mall. So I'm 42 years old. That's like, dating me. This was in 2004. And I was working at Calvin Klein. And I was there when they said, we're not going to sell things online. It doesn't make any sense. This is a fad. This internet shopping thing is a fad. So it's important to what we're all doing today is Web 2. Like we all remember when that was around. And for me, I built my career up to being CMO at Alexander Wang. So if you're familiar with the fashion industry, Alexander Wang is quite a notable, incredible company. Alex is a brilliant, brilliant designer, fashion industry genius, quite frankly. And that's when I realized that that was not for me. And it didn't actually bring me happiness. And other people can have careers doing lots of things, but each person has to figure out what brings you joy, what brings you purpose, what brings you happiness. And yoga and meditation was the absolute inflection point. When those two things came into my life in 2010, I was somewhat dragged to a yoga studio by a good friend of mine. Thank you, Jen, for doing that. My heart opened, and I didn't realize I was a hardened New Yorker, just playing the game, achieving game A to its finest, right? Amazing job, amazing lots of things you can have in New York City. And it oriented me to what the power of yoga, meditation, and taking care of your own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health truly means. I got those righted for myself, and then I embarked in the wellness entrepreneur industry. So I founded a meditation company 8 years ago, and I've had many journeys along the way, and it all goes to where Faiz and I are now collaborating with everything that we're doing for Highvibe Network, which is essentially a Web3 company using that technology to bring more wellness and raise consciousness in this world. And I think that right there will help eradicate a lot of the pain, suffering, and problems that we see right now if you turn on the news.
And I think that sort of really comes back to also partially what you were saying earlier, Faiz, right? I mean, if you think about it, right? I mean, we're all, how did you get to Bali and the worlds collided that the two of you are now really driving on a common mission and getting that together and driving forward and moving on top of Web 2, this Web 3 world, right? And that to me, how do you find it is working, at the moment, both of you are in Bali, so it's a bit easier. But when you have decentralized teams to find the talent, the partners that share the same vision, the passions to bring that to life and help create Highvibe, how do you find that challenge? And I'm always asked that. So I like to sort of hear how others find that, and particularly on different types of journeys, right? With the mission that you've got set out for Highvibe.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much synchronicity, and there's a saying that I love. In this life, there's no such thing as coincidence. And so when something happens, it's actually meant to be. And I really believe that. Yeah. And so Chiyoko and I met through like a series of interactions and connections. And it was very much like, undeniable that we're like friends and that we're going to co-create in some way. And it happened in stages. She actually joined Co-Mastermind, which was the event that you spoke about earlier on in this chat. And she was helping steward that and help, bring really good experiences to the table. And that's evolved into something that's much more strategic and long-tailed and in depth. And from a talent perspective, I feel like the best people that we've brought on, we've magnetized. We haven't gone in some like traditional search fashion to find them, although we are doing that. And we do have a talent funnel that's being refined ongoing. And we have lots of interest of people who want to be part of the project. In fact, most people who hear about our project are like, how do we get involved? And so we have to be very selective on the front end because we can't possibly bring on everyone into the team. And so we have to be careful around who we bring on, and that vetting process is being constantly evaluated and refined so that we can be most effective with our energy and attention as we're building, right? Because invariably when you're building, there's a basket of different things that you need to be focused on. And, you know, building itself is one thing, but then curating the people who are building together and then planning for the next sprints, and then obviously looking at how we're distributing it and talking about it, and the communication layer is also really key. And so, as you know, as another founder, there's a multitude of things that need to be done at the same time, right? Concurrently. And so talent is super important. And we're very lucky right now. We've got an amazing team. And I know at Trusted Node, we also do. And even having said that, there's still so much more that we need to do, and new people that will be invariably part of our missions. And so luckily, being in Bali and in Asia, we're in a tractor field right now in this post-COVID world where a lot of people want to live in these places or spend more time in these places or align with these time zones, even if they're not in the same physical space. And so there's a bit of luck there. And also, I feel like because we're living in a more international environment, we're used to using Zoom and different time zones and curating, you know, meetings in that fashion. And so we're built for this. You know, working in a traditional setting 9 to 5 wouldn't probably work for us because, you know, Chiyoko goes to yoga at 11, but she's on calls at 8 p.m. sometimes, which was much different than the corporate lifestyle, I guess. So the flexibility.
Really that work-life mesh, right? So that's really one of the things that have really allowed this decentralization of living and working, right? And so, and then look, you can go to your yoga class at 2:00 in the afternoon, right? Or you can do it at 6 in the morning. But on the flip side, you might be on calls, and I know you are, Faiz, at 10 p.m., 11, 2 a.m., right? Because that balance allows you to then with everybody working everywhere, allows you to have that kind of mesh, if you will.
Totally.
Sorry. I just felt that was really important. And I think the other thing that's really led to this is, you were in New York, Chiyoko, before this, right? And so all of a sudden, New York is no longer that gravity. For us, Silicon Valley is no longer the tech gravity, right? It's all of a sudden dispersed around the world. And everybody can be a startup, can be an entrepreneur and launch their business because of this decentralized nature. It naturally may have benefits, but how do you find that transition and moving away, having this team online and just finding a better center of gravity for your personal life, health, wellness, and all of that?
Those are really great observations and questions and inquiries. And I feel every person who works for a decentralized team can relate to these observations of like, how have things shifted in the past 2+ years now? And significantly, we all know that. And I think as founders here, it really takes tenacity as a founder or co-founder to be able to hold the container as it shifts and changes with a global team where everybody, especially global. It's one thing if you have an office where it's optional to work from home a couple of days, but everyone's in the same city like New York. That is not the case for Highvibe Network. I think we're represented in 9 different countries, maybe more, with our team members. So I think it also takes a certain type of employee or consultant who wants to work with our company, who understands everything you just said about what are the benefits, and those benefits resonate with them. For some people, it just doesn't. And because there's complexities where they actually want that 9 to 5, maybe it's because of childcare, maybe it's because of who knows what other factors go on, but it's not a fit for them. So I think the company, one thing we've been very successful at is that in our recruitment process and our hiring process, we are crystal clear about how our culture lives and breathes within the team, and that the only permanent thing in life is change. I feel like we've got all these wisdom quotes that we're offering out here, and that the style of hours that you might be keeping now because you're located in Dubai, get in that groove. But if we get a couple more people located in Australia, we might need to shift some of the meetings to be at different times. So this person needs to be agile with how our company evolves. And I think what Faiz and I are also trying to do is like not become rigid with, okay, this meeting is every Tuesday, 11 a.m. for the rest of our lives. It's like, well, it is for now because this works. Let's see how the team morphs over the next 3 to 6 months. and adjust, but also let's not adjust every week, because people get very, ungrounded when you change too much, and there isn't an office being a grounding place. So we have to be careful of everyone's grounding as well.
And then I find that challenge. I mean, one of the challenges I'm constantly confronted with and I try to deal with is if you're global, right? You transcend Australia, you've got Middle East, you've got Europe, you've got the West Coast, the East Coast. You're going across multiple borders, and how in product development, there is a necessary level, particularly at an early stage of a product, of brainstorming, whiteboarding, and I've got this real problem. I need to talk to my team members to figure out how to solve that. How do you tackle that when you've got these 5 different time zones that you're transcending? I mean, do you have any tricks or tips that you might want to share? We'd love to hear how way you tackle it.
I'm going to let Faiz take this one. Stefan, it's almost as if you were listening to our conversation with the team yesterday. So, Faiz, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, it's actually a really, really good question. And so there's a couple of different things that get, thrown into the mix when you're building products, right? And so number one is like your all hands meetings where you have a bunch of people on and you're trying to build momentum. And the other ones are where you're actually problem solving. You're trying to like get rid of a challenge that's in the mix, and you need like the think tank type of environment where it's like a working session. And then you have some things where it's just like, there's a couple or 2, 3 people that are moving something forward, and not everyone needs to be in on that conversation. And so I think there's like a free flowing approach. And so last night, for example, there was a smart contract thing that was being developed, and there was 2 developers that were working on that, and they were working on that in their evenings, but no one else needed to be on. So they worked at their convenience, and it was like, at 10:43, they're jumping on the call. And so it's not at like a fixed time, but they're just like, hey, I'm ready, you're ready, boom, they jump on, and then they're screen sharing, and they're, in the code compilers, like, fixing things. And so that really works, right? The ad hoc type of like, boom, let's get it done. And it's really nice when both people are flexible and they're both excited about doing it. And so they're just at the first opportunity they both have, they're jumping on and making it happen. And I really love seeing that. The other one is like the, when there's blockers or when there's challenges and you need to sense make, it's like, hey, like there's a challenge here. Like we want to solve this. No one solved it yet, right? Like with Trust and Node, we're solving things that no one's actually solved yet. And so we have conversations that are like, hey, here's one scenario of how we can do it. And then people look at it, they review, they're like, oh, how does it work when we go multi-chain? Does that still work? Oh, which account do they need to log into in order to have that persistent experience? And so there's different considerations that then come in. And so that's really cool. It's like a think tank environment where you bring in the smartest people for that particular challenge and maybe one set of fresh eyes. And then you essentially go in like a round robin and cover it. And then the other one is the momentum calls. And this one is something that is constantly being fine-tuned. But really, I feel like when you have a lot of people on a call, you only want to point out challenges that can actually be addressed. And you want to actually focus on generating momentum. And this is like around getting morale up, getting people feel excited, and people leaving the call feeling like, fuck yeah, like pardon my French, but I really want to make this happen. Like this is like the most exciting thing that I could possibly be doing right now. And I feel like sometimes there's opportunity for course correction. And that's a blessing too. Like none of us are perfect and none of these meetings are perfect. And so sometimes when something actually isn't perfect or isn't aligned in all the ways, pointing it out and looking at like not a personal thing like our finger pointing, but like how do we improve this? And that constant improvement is actually where you shine. Like none of us are going to show up and figure everything out in the first meeting. And so how do we treat projects like a laboratory where if there's like an ingredient that needs to be shifted a little bit or something that needs to be heated up to a different level, to use that analogy, that we actually have our fingers on the pulse and can actually make those changes in real time.
And it's so interesting, right? Because in a way, every time a new team member joins and there's a shift in the dynamics, right? And so how do you incorporate that shift in the dynamics? And so as you mentioned, Chiyoko, we constantly, the change is the only constant, right? So somebody new coming in is bringing in a new set of dynamic. How do you integrate that? How do you bring that in the fold and then still keep that alignment in the same sort of similar direction or the North Star? As long as you have that North Star, how we get there is always going to change, right? We're always going to go different paths, but we've got that North Star. Having that so clear is really important, I find. Anyway, I mean, that's sort of the other thing I think is sort of given where we're at, and we're talking about wellness and health and the situation that we are suffering on the planet, I think today, right? I think, we've got this disease going out, we've got a war breaking out, we've got egos playing, there's no humility anymore in the rulers that are running the world. And so how do you keep a North Star, with all of this constant setbacks? And it's not just, okay, we got COVID, shit, we have to change everything, excuse my language, but, that's it. Okay, let's fix it. Let's deal with it. And then, okay, we're open again. And then, no, we're shutting that down again. And, we open again. And no, we're shutting down. So there's a constant barrage and pushing you down. So anytime you feel you can come up for air, they're pushing you down again. I mean, how do you feel within the community that you're engaged with in Highvibe that people deal with this? And yeah, just maybe how that stop there.
These are very relevant topics. And it's interesting that little bit that you said, Stefan, it's like, how do the people in our community deal with it? And then there's also, how does Chiyoko deal with it? And how does Faiz deal with it? And there's something that Faiz and I have a similarity with is to say it in the most simple way is we don't let the state of affairs of the world get us down. And we don't let it deter us from our North Star. And we don't let us creep this doubt, fear, insecurity, FUD in our own company of like, oh God, can we even do this? Because the bear market and the war and it's like, we are born and put on this planet for a reason. And we fundamentally believe that. And it's right now showing up in this expression of Highvibe Network and what we're doing and the team that's actually building this. And this is part of our purpose. And yes, we will have to be agile. Yes, we'll have to go back to the board and say, guess what? We pivoted this, we pivoted that, but we feel good for this reason because XYZ all changed overnight in the NFT communities. Like things are shifting very quickly. And I don't think it's that different than a lot of startups that have just been through their own, rough cycles. Like this is very classic. And like the state of global affairs, well, the world has been through a lot. Like the history of the human species has been through a lot over all the centuries and thousands of years. And we were born for a reason at this exact time. If you choose to believe, like I do, something along the lines of like our souls incarnate to do specific work with other people, other souls here on this planet. And we're on a mission to make this world be a better place by allowing individual people to find their own center, their own grounding, find compassion in their hardened hearts because they're in a deep state of sorrow for whatever's happening in their personal life, their community, or bigger life, and offering people tools to be able to cope and find that inner light inside of them and act like the higher version of themselves versus the lower version of themselves. High self versus small self. It's a yoga sutras phrase or lesson. Be able to feed the wolf of love and light versus the wolf of fear and negativity. We all have that choice every day, no matter what our circumstances are. And so if at Highvibe we're building something that helps people lean towards the light and being the better version of themselves, that's what allows me to keep going. And I will reference one other thing. One of my favorite books is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, if either of you are familiar. And he's a Holocaust survivor, a very, very famous book. He's a psychiatrist, I believe, and he survived Auschwitz. And he wrote this book. The reason why people survived the Holocaust and others didn't in these internment camps is because people who had meaning in their life and they hung on to that meaning and not the circumstance that they were surrounded by. This is his opinion, and something that me resonates a lot. People go through very difficult things. And if you can keep your North Star alive and purpose for living, even in trying circumstances, we will prevail. We will get through.
But there is something, yeah, exactly. Like you say, the circumstances sometimes really have a significant impact. And sometimes you lose it for a certain period of time, but then you have to refine that again. And that's really what keeps you going and pushes you through that.
And having the tools to refine it. So when you experience real trauma in your life at 25, 45, 65 years old, how do you have the tools to get through that period of trauma? We're all going to experience trauma to varying degrees. And a lot of people in this world will experience trauma that I probably or hopefully will never experience in my lifetime because I'm a privileged person. And I work very hard with the privilege that I have to be able to have positive impact.
But I think like you said, right? I mean, life is a journey. And so if you don't have trauma on that journey, you don't progress, you don't evolve either, right? I don't feel you're pushed under stress situations and you don't have that survival instinct to find that North Star again and say, actually, I can handle this. I can cope with this. I'll come through this somehow, right? And so those
growth edges that are necessary. And when you break through a growth edge, it's an entire next level. It's an upgrade in how you're able to not just deal with life, thrive in life. When we face these traumatic challenges or traumas and overcome, it's a powerful upgrade that we receive.
One of the things is, and what I love about what you're doing as well, I mean, I think Faiz and I have had a number of conversations around, you know, the planet and where we're going with the planet. We were talking about it earlier before we started this call or this video conference or this panel. I don't know what we call it, fireside chat or
it's all the things.
It's all, but one of the things is, right, sort of, I really love the fact that we can bring governance into on-chain, right? And we can structure the governance as terms of how the community would like it. And the community can ape in to that governance and those policies that are reflected in that smart contract, for lack of a better name, right? And so one of the things that I really get upset about is the governance that is running the world today is very limiting in terms of what we can choose in as a community and where we can go. And it's largely based on where we're located, right? So if I'm in the US, I'm adhering to Biden's governance, right? If I'm in China, I'm Xi Jinping's governance. And if I'm in Russia, it's Putin's, right? And so you have no choice. And so to me, how do we build worlds where people can ape in and choose to be a part of maybe a more wellness focused, maybe a more freewheeling, a DeFi oriented? I can jump across these different models that allow me to find my true personality and be a reflection of how I can evolve, right? And what's my journey? My journey looks really different in that world.
Now you're getting me excited. Yeah. I was already excited, by the way. And so right? I'm like, let's go. LFG. You know, this is probably one of the most important topics at the moment. And one of our very good friends and advisors, Jordan Hall, wrote an article recently called The DAO Moment. We can link it in the show notes. Yeah. And really, this is the time. And what he says very, comedically, but in, a very real statement, is that if you're not here to help, get the F out of the way. Because this is the time for the DAO. And it's not guaranteed to work, by the way, but it is one of our best chances at ratifying some of the challenges that you mentioned. And, in this environment we're living in today, which is very evolved and actually very advanced, and there's a lot of positives to the system, even though people ridicule it all the time. There's a lot of good things. Like, if you have a bank account, it's a very nice facility to have. But some of the challenges with the banking system are not so fun, and it's really annoying, right? I know this is something I'm telling you as a joke because I know how much you like DeFi more than TradFi, let's say. And so, in the analogy you gave, there's like the world's countries have their treasuries, and us as the people don't really have much say in how those treasuries are operated. We don't have much stewardship over those treasuries. But then we have our own personal assets, which we have full stewardship of for the most part, right? Sometimes annoyingly not, but usually yes, right? And then in between is where DAOs sit, where there can actually be treasuries that we can co-steward together. And the stewardship component is actually very key, because it's not about how much we can take from it and put in our own pocket, but it's actually how we can use those funds towards a mission, towards some sort of prerogative or value system that needs to do something in the world. And so, with Trusted Node, when you fast forward and you look at like decades from now, it has the potential to be one of the investment bank equivalents of the new world, which is a DAO that'll power DeFi and power the economies at an infrastructure layer that's fractionalized and owned by the people. And so if you look at downtown Hong Kong, which you showed us the skyline earlier, and you look at all those buildings and those names at the top, which names do you see, right? You see the banks, right? They're all banks. Yeah. And probably 90% banks to be accurate, right? And this is in most cities. You look at New York, you look at, Beijing, you look at Sydney, you look at Toronto, you look at, places around the world, Vancouver. It's like that, right? And so in our lifetime, we're going to see DeFi take that over. And we're going to see companies and organizations and DAOs that merge into the likes of Trusted Node and actually are able to facilitate the financial needs of the people in a way that has a number of products in its portfolio that everyone can steward. In that treasury, that amount of money that organization and DAO grows and holds can be stewarded by the people who are holders of the token or are staking the token, whatever the governance mandate is. And in Highvibe Network, our mission is really to evolve consciousness. And what that means is elevating people's emotional states and tied into an attention economy that's actually for the people, that's actually aligning the interests of the people who are using it, which we call collectors, and the creators and artists who are creating experiences within that. And if you look at social media today and the social dilemma that we all face, there's actually a big essay being written on this for Highvibe at the moment. There's a lot of challenges in the legacy systems that are extractionary. And most of our attention and our life force and our true value creation capabilities are being extracted upon for interruption marketing or infinite scrolls that we're tied to because of the algorithms being so good. And so we're here to change that and do it in a way that's not conflictual with the legacy, but also augments the existing patterns people have and moves them towards what we call functional entertainment, which are things that are good for you, that also feel good, that are entertaining.
Yeah, I think that whole social element is changing, right? I mean, the way, businesses have evolved as these centralized empires that have done fantastic and captured the web 2 really well. And I think at some point they just, because of their different constituents that they have, on the one hand, they have the community, and then on the other hand, they had their shareholders. And so they had to juggle between, shareholder value versus, community value, right? And so they're stuck in the middle where they provided and launched and provided only community value. And that's how they grew that community. But then all of a sudden, the pressure from the investors and shareholders was, I need to be able to extract value out of that community. How do I do that? And then that's shifted their model to then all of a sudden having extraction. So adding a lot of value at the beginning and extracting all of the value at the end, right, towards the investors and shareholders, if you will, that aren't necessarily the users at the same time, by the way, right? So a lot of that, which is warped in a way, right?
That's the challenge with VCs. I think VCs do add a lot of value, but I think the biggest challenge is that they buy before everyone and they dump on everyone. And that's the thing that the crypto market doesn't really love about VCs. But I think the positive side of VCs is that they open up doors and they help with traction and they give good advice and they have access that the companies themselves don't necessarily have. And one other thing I'll mention that's really pertinent here is that there's lots of call-out culture, especially from the legacy system, that's critical of Bitcoin or critical of crypto or critical of this whole movement. And a lot of the people who criticize this stuff are not the ones using it, right?
Exactly.
So people who are criticizing NFTs and saying they'll never make it, and they're right-click saving on these JPEGs thinking they're worthless, those people have never minted an NFT, right, for the most part. The people who are criticizing DeFi and saying that it'll never work are the ones who have never actually experienced it, right? And they haven't actually seen the genie out of the bottle, which once you see, you can't unsee. And the same is true with like builders, right? Like a lot of people can criticize projects when they're in their infancy, when they're early stage, when they're finding their way. And projects in the space need a lot of resiliency and need to go through their own paths of, adoption and figuring it out and, dealing with, friction on the on-ramps from fiat and all these types of things, right? Login. And so the ones that are actually here doing the work should be commended and should be celebrated. And when they're going through challenges, we should actually get behind them and actually try and help them rather than try and bring them down, because this is actually really needed for the world. And so nothing starts out perfectly. And most of the most important projects that will exist will have tough times along the way. And I feel like it's really important for us to remember that it's so easy to have like a finger pointing exercise and say, it's, you should do it this way or you should do it this way. But most of those people aren't actually the builders and they don't know what it's like.
And if you look, most of the companies, every company out there has had its challenging moments and they have to break through that, right? It comes back to even us as personal lives. We have on these journeys, we have a lot of impact that puts us under pressure at some point, especially entrepreneurs. You're starting a company, you're building a business, you've got lots of different stress points that you're exposed to. And with a bit of luck, you can break through those. And with a bit of help, you can break through those. And that's really important. I remember even early days, right? In Web 2, you were talking about that, Chiyoko, earlier, right? Facebook? Nobody's ever going to use Facebook. They'll never make any money, right? And look at them today, right? Google, what? Google's got to compete against Yahoo, InfoSeek, and all these other meta search engines that were out there, right? Nobody's going to compete against that. You can't compete. That's like, and so.
Yeah, I'm going to talk here and just say, Faiz and I often talk about, or I bring up the story about Netflix, right? And I don't know exactly how it all went down and who said what, but they were actually, had to find out figure out how to make revenue. And so mailing DVDs in an envelope you put in your mailbox, that was their revenue driving model. And the people there saw the future of the internet and they knew streaming video was going to be possible. You try to tell that to like some investors or the average public, forget it. They're like, never could this thing actually have videos that are on it. I mean, this was all impossible. And so having that kind of reminder for what Faiz and I are doing right now with Highvibe Network and a lot of other Web3 companies building, we are so ahead of people's understanding of what these people are even going to be doing in 12 to 24 months time. Steve Jobs says it all the time. You don't ask people what they want, you show them. And that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Or you show them, or even it's where is the puck? Wayne Gretzky, where's the puck going? And I'll go where the puck's going. I'm not going to follow the puck as it is now, right? So where do people?
Let's keep winning.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing. I think we sense like the current, and this is where intuition, as founders or visionaries, really is something I hone in on. And I speak to other visionaries as well, because we can't lose our intuition to get so in the, okay, where's the market at today? Like what's happening right now? It's like, no, where is this all going? And how do we catch the current, right? Don't fight it. Don't try to swim upstream. How do we catch the current and like read the tea leaves of where this is all going?
I think a couple of things, right? One is I really like that. Where is this all going, right? And I think when the US and Europe and China started printing money when COVID happened, it's only transitory inflation. We just felt that there was no insight and no modern approach to calculating inflation and providing transparency. So we launched Truflation.com. And right now, I don't know, I woke up this morning and maybe it's my algorithm that's finding all this inflation data, but I'm getting YouTube video after YouTube video, tweet after tweet, and social post after social post, inflation. And so, yeah, lucky, a bit of luck comes with that too, but we just hit the spot with Truflation.com. But the other interesting with Truflation.com is we've been going out and sort of doing a pre-sale on the tokens. And one thing that I've noticed particularly is there's a shift in the investors that you're meeting today. They've come out of product development. They've been building. They've been entrepreneurs themselves. They are no longer just financial analysts that have crunched spreadsheets, that are just have analyzed by looking at papers or websites or seen you've crossed the T's and dot the I's properly, which I find inspirational, right? So the value that you bring and your experiences are met on the counter side of the table. And maybe they'll have a developer team there too that can help and build on a product that you've got, right? And I know with Highvibe and LionDAO, you've been also talking to other investors. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing that same element, especially as I find that investors today are also a lot more conscious about the well-being, right? So mentally, physically, as well as, sanity-wise, then sort of finding that balance, right? Oh, maybe not. Okay, interesting.
I think they could be, I think everyone wishes they were more than they're actually able to. Like when push comes to shove and someone has to write the checks, it's still hard to do it for like meditation companies. I speak from my personal experience so many years ago and with wellness. It's like, and everyone wants to offer great employee benefits, but it's just very hard to do. I will say, I think there's tremendously positive change in the right direction that is happening, but I would love to see greater improvements. I would like to see a lot more truly impactful wellness companies invested in by VCs, because I do feel that's one of the things that's going to actually help the world. The ROI measurement of like psychological wellness and mental wellness, it's like hard to put KPIs, on that. And it's people using it and people are addicted to the shit they see on their Facebook feed instead of some of these wellness apps. So how do we find that psychological balance? But Faiz, I would love to hear your, take on that too, from like finger on the pulse of, VCs and the investor space with wellness.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much wisdom in what you shared. And, as we wrap, there's two really big points that I'd love to hone in on. And one is the one that we're talking about here, is that I think there's a more elevated investor that's coming to the table, and it's not your traditional quants and only people who are just number crunching, but it's people who actually get the space. And as time progresses, the degen culture is turning into elevated degen culture. Yeah. It's not just about how much can I take from the system, because these are the perils of the legacy system where everyone's just take, and then it ends up extractionary, right? Net. Yeah. And I feel like the elevated culture is the one that's like, how do we use this for good? How do we use these tools to impact lots of people? And how do we use this as wealth generation for a lot of people? How do we make it profitable to do good things within an ecosystem with game theory? And I feel like the people who we're attracting are really tuning into that more and more. And we're educating people too. So like, we're talking to investors and they're seeing what we're doing and they're like, holy F, you've been working on this for how many years? You're doing this. And they ask a lot of good questions. And I feel like when they leave the meeting, Chiyoko and I say this all the time, they usually feel better like inside after they leave meetings with us. And that actually means something. That's a currency, right? And the second point I'll share is that we're seeing a really big shift now more than ever in women entering Web3. And some of the stuff Chiyoko mentioned is actually the wisdom of the feminine. It's really around like feeling the people and really caring for the participants. And it's not only about solving problems, which is very masculine, and innovation and more lines of code, but it's actually more about the intangibles. Like, how do people feel when they're using this stuff? What are the investors looking for that they should be leaning into more, that's like actually caring about the well-being of humanity and not just about more TPS, transactions per second, or whatever it is, right? And I feel like that confluence between both is actually where we're all going to shine. It's like the harmony, the synarchy between masculine and feminine, where we're all rising together. And it's not one or the other. It's not about, only women should be focused on or only men should be focused on. It's actually, how do we actually coexist and support each other and not have this like stigma around one or the other, but actually there's like pure harmony.
And I think that's where I love, the fact that tokens and tokenomics can really put the power in the user's hand to appreciate and quantify the value that they can give to feeling good. Because otherwise it's super hard to put value to it. And any investor that sort of sees there's a big enough community that's interested in feeling good, and they're going to put a value to a coin that's going to be out there. And the same applies to the planet. The same applies to the environment and everything else we're doing, right? And so if there is a value that's out there and a community large enough to appreciate that value, I think, price go up, right? Because people will demand to have a part of that. And the only way to interact with that community is having an NFT or a token, or in some form of fashion, be engaged with that community, right?
That's why I love you, Steph. You get it. And it's really all about that. And like the tokenomics in game theory is really the sort of architecture. And then it comes down to this magnetic force around people actually using it, feeling good, and getting benefits from it.
Exactly.
And if those two things mesh, that's how you see, the adoption curve go like a Wayne Gretzky hockey stick.
And that's why we need this interaction with people on a global scale to be able to exchange, because that drives communication, that drives interaction, and that interaction and communication creates a level of happiness. And so that's what we need to foster to minimize the investments in more weapons, in more killing machines, and instead let's have a happy world. And on that note, I really implore you to check out Highvibe, follow Faiz, follow Chiyoko on their Twitter accounts, and check it out on highvibe.com. Is it at the URL?
Highvibe.network, highvibe.xyz. It all links to highvibe.network. And we're super excited about what we're creating. We're very tightly aligned with Truflation, with Trusted Node, and this whole ecosystem. And we feel like Web3, we all work together. We're like, jets in the air that are, doing good and dropping gifts to people, quite literally. Thank you for having the opportunity.
Tightly aligned and loosely coupled. I think that's the way we're focused moving forward. Thank you, everybody.
Big love.
See you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.